How does a man serve 25 years in prison for a crime that he did not commit? Unfortunately, this was exactly the question for 41-year-old Louis Diaz, who was convicted as the 1977 Bird Road serial rapist. But more on that later. Between the years of 1977 and 1979, over 25 women were preyed on in the Bird Road area of Coral Gables, Florida. The motif was always the same. The perpetrator would flash their car lights, signaling the woman in the car ahead to pull over, but would then threaten them with a gun to join him in his car. He would then sexually assault the women and leave the victims alone in the middle of the road. Do you think you could identify the right suspect? In 1980, 41-year-old Louis Diaz was wrongfully convicted with the charges of kidnapping, sexual battery, and aggravated assault. He was later exonerated on August 3rd of 2005, 25 years later. But with 25 potential witnesses, how exactly did this even happen? How was he in prison for so long? Clue number one, which was the primary clue, was eyewitness testimonies. According to provided descriptions, the perp seemed to be about 200 pounds, at least 6 foot tall, speak English pretty well, and actually quite vulgarly, as well as riding in a two-door green vehicle. He was also said to steal items such as the driver licenses and underwear from the victims that he tormented. Diaz was originally questioned after the first victim of the true Bird Road rapist saw him at her workplace and reported his license plate to the police as his general appearance and green four-door Chevrolet vehicle seemed to fit her memory merely 2 days after the incident. When he was brought in for questioning, it was discovered that Diaz was significantly below the identified weight and height of the suspect and couldn't speak or understand English. His car also did not match the description, and upon further investigation, it was actually discovered that his car nor his home contained any physical evidence, such as the memorabilia or semen, that would link him to the crime. Based on this information, who could the police possibly identify as a suspect in this heinous crime? I'll let the audience have some time to think about it. Which suspect matches the description? Did you think about it? Well, if you cheated and decided to use the answers that were provided here in this list, you'll find that you would be correct. Louis Diaz, after being shown in the lineups for multiple victims, was identified by 5 of them and arrested by the police as the Bird Road rapist in the year of 1980. Now, before anybody gets too excited about getting the answer correct, I do have to reiterate that cheating and using shortcuts is never the right answer, and that's proven here because both were wrong in the case of the witnesses and the police. Now, you may be wondering, why do I and why should you care? Well, witness misidentification is a large contributor to wrongful convictions, with over 60% of the Innocent Project cases that were later overturned by DNA evidence being due to witness misidentification. Although it's such a large problem, it isn't even always intentional. Due to estimator variables that are beyond the means of the court, the case can be completely and unknowingly thrown in the wrong direction. In the case of Louis Diaz specifically, all victims in the case were in very high stress situations. It's commendable to me that they were even able to recall as many details about the perpetrator as they were in the first place, and I don't believe that they should be personally blamed for what happened to Louis at all. Additionally, according to the weapon focus effect, eyewitness accuracy can significantly decrease when weapons are present at the time of the crime. So they truly cannot take sole accountability for the imprisonment of Louis Diaz. This case interests me because in a case where witness nor the system particularly deserve full blame, I wonder who should the anger be directed towards, and how can we, as the people of America, ensure that those with similar fates to Louis feel the justice that they definitely deserve? I believe that in the case of a false conviction, many new victims are created. This would be the wrongly accused, their families, and their associates, like their close friends. In the case of Louis Diaz, this was especially true. Louis denied being a rapist, and before he was convicted, so did his children and his former wife, according to Goodnow and Terry in the New York Times in 2005. But did you hear that? Did you notice how I said Louis' former wife, as in his wife at the time? Yeah, when he was convicted, Louis received life in prison plus 55 years. And due to this, his wife divorced him and remarried while he was still serving time in prison. Imagine that happened to you and your life got turned upside down when you know you're innocent, and due to the system's insistence that that is not the case, you lose someone who that you think is supposed to be your biggest supporter in life. And I know that this would take a toll on my mental health personally, no matter who stood by me in that time. And this is why I'm especially glad to hear that Louis was later released. Despite the divorce between him and his wife, though, on the road to freedom, Diaz did still have a good support system around him. Investigator Virginia Snyder from his defense team continued to work on his case even after his conviction. She began searching for other possible suspects by staying in contact with the witnesses and seeing if they had any more evidence. In 1993, two victims recanted their identifications of Diaz, so he filed a motion to vacate his conviction a year later, and it was frozen that way until in 2001, when the charges were vacated and Diaz was suddenly eligible for parole. Yay! That ended up being denied in 2003 anyways. At this point, the Florida Innocent Project was informed and contacted by his son Jose. This is the son of Diaz, by the way. So they and the Holland and Knight fought for DNA testing in September of the same year, 2003, using a rape kit and other evidence provided by some victims. In June of 2005, test results showed that the perpetrator's DNA did not match Louis in both rounds of testing because they had to confirm. On August 3rd, 2005, all charges were finally dropped and Louis Diaz, after 25 long years, was set free. Family and other supporters were there with him, and from the age of 41 to 67, he could finally say that he was a free bird. And with this final information, the case was closed. So these are my final thoughts. The Exoneration Project already outlines many reforms that have been implemented in multiple states to prevent eyewitness misidentification. This includes double blind sequential lineups, clear instructions for witnesses, and statements of confidence from witnesses at the time of their identification in the lineups. And while I think those are all great, I think it's important to have more rules in place that address cases specifically where eyewitness identification is the only evidence, as misidentification is acknowledged within the field as such a large problem among cases of false conviction, such as this one. And due to this lack of reform on this specific topic, I believe there was definitely potential for this case to occur just as it did then today, since Diaz's original consideration of DNA evidence was kind of brushed past and they said that they didn't have any evidence even though the rape kit was already there. Everyone in the system are just human, and negligence, especially involving cases with people of color, are not uncommon, but I do hope that this will improve at some point in the future. I have a lot of hope for it, actually. And with that, I actually conclude the video. Here are my references, with it being from the Innocence Project, the Exoneration Project, New York Times, and the law offices of Thomas C. Mooney Law Offices. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned something new or just enjoy.